Hey everybody, hey everybody.
And I don't get the screen door effect.
Everybody, ready? Audience, are you ready? Let's just nod. Panelists?
Yeah, I can see.
So, hey everybody, I'm Sean Gold. I run entertainment for Wattpad, the social storytelling platform. If you're in this room, you should be here for the power of VR, AR, new language of artistry, a unique moment of commercial possibility and marketplace.
But
Probably sounds very similar to the last panel you were at. But we have a pretty amazing, really an amazing group of people, and the access to these people is very unique. So I'm kind of excited about that. I'm going to introduce everyone very quickly, then go back around and ask them to kind of describe a little bit more about what specifically their company or what they're doing as an individual relative to AR and VR, go into some questions, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end. Typical digital Hollywood format. So first we have, and tell me if I'm saying your name incorrectly, I apologize, Christine Catano, executive producer Christine's on the end. You could probably guess by the female name and the only, she's executive producer with Framestore Virtual Reality Studio. Framestore's visual effects house did you win an Oscar for Gravity?
Yes, we did.
Yes, you did. So very famous for Gravity. She's grown her department from an interactive arm of the company to a dedicated studio focused on VR. Then we have Rich Flyer, who is president of advertising and games at Digital Domain, where he comes there from the advertising and video game business. So everyone's got kind of a different perspective and is coming to the VR from a different path, which is actually great. Then we have Cameron Curtis. Oh, actually, sorry, I'm not doing that in order.
That's all right.
Rich, there's Rich.
Rich is right here.
Then we have Cameron Curtis. Is the director of digital marketing for Universal Pictures. He works on digital campaigns for films such as Furious 7, Jurassic World, Ted. Universal is having a pretty amazing year this year, 27% market share, almost double what the next studio Disney is doing, and 3 times what they did last year. So you're going to kind of tell us how that's happening and why that's happening. Then we have Michael T. Jones, who's president and CEO of Wearality, formerly spent the last 6 years as Google's chief technology advocate, working directly for Eric Schmidt, and was also the inventor of Google Earth. What have you guys done lately? He led the team that created OpenGL and SGI. When he should, what is that? I'm actually, that's one thing I would like to actually say. Like, let's try to keep acronyms to a minimum. Not everybody knows them. I read that Elon Musk was banning acronyms at SpaceX, and it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. Where were we? So he was CTO of Google Maps, Earth, local search. Great perspective to enter to on VR. And then Jarrell Pear, right there. Manager of digital ideation and digital entertainment product group at DirecTV called D-Lab. He's an inventor who's developed cutting-edge technology for entertainment, art, training, and medical applications. So we'll probably get a little bit of perspective from him outside storytelling. And then Tom Saki, right there, co-founder of Unit 9, which works with agencies and brands to push media forward on creating elegant experiences in mobile, games, installations, VR. His bio notes Tom completed kindergarten in his bio, so I have to call that out. And then he went on to get a degree in architecture. Right from kindergarten. And his background is in film and TV production. So, everybody here is involved in different aspects of VR and got different ideas and opinions, which is the point. And it's interesting because the medium combines so much of what we do in other areas, from film, interactive gaming, sound design, and it's clearly in its infancy. So the most complex and interesting, it's definitely for me, the most complex and interesting media experience I've had so far, trying the Valve experience where you put on the headset, you have hand controls and room tracking. It's a really dynamic experience, and it's nothing what it's going to be. But so I want to start off with a question. And I'll maybe start with Jarrell. Well, the question is, why is VR important? I want to ask each panelist from their perspective. Oh, actually, sorry. Before I do that, I would like you guys to share kind of like what you're doing inside VR. Let's start on the end. Christine.
Sure. As you said, we are Framestore. We're a high-end visual effects company. I co-founded and now run the virtual reality studio at Framestore, which is dedicated to exploring and producing high-end virtual reality content.
Again, my name is Cameron Curtis. I work for Universal Pictures in the digital marketing group. And I think we're thinking about content in new ways, going beyond the traditional TV spot and one sheet when it comes to marketing our movies, and cutting content for both VR and for social, specific to those mediums, and trying to reach audiences in new and engaging ways.
I'm Michael Jones. I took 1 billion people to the roof of their house, and I wanted to find a way to take them inside so they could experience things, museums, life-changing connection with other cultures. So I looked for technologies to do that, and I found that. When I finally found it, I quit Google, which is difficult actually to worm your way out when you're an executive. But I finally left about 6 months, and then I became the CEO of Reality, where we have a lot of patents to spin out from Lockheed Martin, from flight simulation technologies, to be like the extreme lunatic fringe of VR, kind of work that down towards consumer prices, or at least commercial prices. And my interest is how to make things real. Basically, our theme is the reality and virtual reality, which right now it's grotesquely non-real. So what do we need to add to make it be like a normal human experience, just like sitting there today? That's my focus.
I'm Gerald. I'm part of a group at DirecTV, now at AT&T, along with Mark here in the audience, where we look at new and emerging technologies and determine ways that we could possibly bring new types of products and services to our company. VR is obviously an exciting emerging area, and to that effect, we built a number of internal prototypes, some of which we've shown publicly, and about a week and a half ago, we released an app called Big Knockout Boxing VR, which features our boxing league, which takes you to the best seat in the house at Mandalay Bay, so you can see every punch. That's available on Gear VR, and we're continuing to look at space to ways we can make entertainment more immersive and engaging.
Okay, Rich Flyer at Digital Domain. Actually, at the holding company, I used to run commercials and games for DD, but now I'm at the parent company based out of Hong Kong, and I'm managing business development worldwide. In VR, we're taking our technology at DD and with our partner, Immersive Media and IM360, and we're looking at everything from the commercial space all the way through to bringing content directly to consumers, and looking at all the incredible technology that we built over the last 20 years and finding new ways to deploy it in this space.
It's me now.
That's you.
Tom, partner at Unit 9. We're a production company that help brands innovate. So obviously VR is the exciting place for brands. We do a range of things, from shooting live action with celebrities to developing products. For William Hill, a gambling house, we can now have you sit on a horse in real time as you're betting on the horse, which is pretty cool. But contrary to the smartest guy in the room here, we're actually pushing. We're less interested in the reality aspect. We're more interested in where it's going to go, Disney style.
Disney style. Okay, so yeah, I'd like to go back to the why is VR important? It seems like a sort of a contrived question. As best I can come up with. No. But before we do that, Jarrell, can you just give sort of a breakdown of the difference between VR and AR, just in case people in the room don't know? And I said no acronyms, didn't I? Yeah. Virtual reality and augmented reality.
Yeah. So virtual reality, I think a lot of us here are familiar with it and have tried it, thanks to things like Google Cardboard. And basically, it's a world where an immersive experience in which all of the elements are, synthetically generated. They can be provided, they can be now, thanks to companies like IM360 and Digital Domain, streamed to you. AR is a mixture of the two. A lot of us may have experienced things where we pick up our phone, you view the world through the camera, and you may see characters running around, and those are the traditional delineations there. Things like HoloLens would be classified as a AR display. The Oculus Rift is a VR display. If if you're looking, never need a term to encapsulate both, you can use the term mixed reality. And if you ever need to explain all the variations across those, there's other things called augmented virtual reality. But look up the word mixed reality continuum. It explains it all, and it's a really good framework to work around.
Can you give a practical example of VR use of augmented reality today, or?
Well, I think that if you ever see the movie, Michael can probably speak to this from aerospace background. See Top Gun, you saw guys looking at seeing targets overlaid on the real world. That is augmented reality in kind of its earliest deployed form. I think there are a number of PlayStation experiences where you can you see yourself in the TV set. You hold your hands up, or you hold some type of tracking marker up, and an object will look like it's running around. But the goal ultimately for VR is where basically, AR is where you could seamlessly mix the virtual and the real, and you never know the difference. To the point that maybe 30, 40 years from now, you may have a generation of individuals who don't really see the difference, because they're constantly their whole world is augmented.
Let's ask Cameron. Well, why is VR important for what you do for marketing films?
Sure. One of the coolest things we're doing at Universal, and again, I say this separate from VR and AR, is for the first time we're cutting content specific for social platforms. So when we think about the way we view content today on our mobile devices, or in the stream of Facebook or on Snapchat or whatever that may be, you don't have time to develop stories. So these are, pieces of content, they're 10 seconds long, where you want to tell the most important elements of that story immediately to catch the user's attention. Right now, there are so many different platforms and so many ways of storytelling that I think Universal wants to be on the forefront when it comes to cutting content and when it comes to innovating and bringing people into our world. I think for the right movies, it makes the most sense. So on Jurassic World, the theme was the park is open. We wanted people to feel as though they had a chance to encounter that dinosaur, like you see in the first movie. If you guys remember the first Jurassic Park, when they first see a Brachiosaurus or Brontosaurus, back then Brontosaurus, not Brachiosaurus, but when they first see that moment, to give users that experience, it was something that was really compelling for us, and making the park seem like a real place. And so for us, it's another way of storytelling. It's another way to get people interested in what we're marketing, and hopefully get them to the theaters to see our movie.
Anybody else want to tackle that question from a different perspective? Why it's important? Why you left Google to do it?
Yeah, so I'd add something to that. It doesn't really maybe sound like it's directly in the entertainment sense, but here's the deal. The important technologies are always about communication between people. So your phone is just as important. It's as much important as you love your mother. So when you call, what I'm saying? When you call your mom on the phone, then the phone enables you to express the love you feel for your mother or your daughter or whatever. So the phone's important not because it's got not a nice shape to it, because there's people at the other end of it. And so the communication aspects of technology, whether it's radio or print or whatever, it's the people that are important. And one of the things that these technologies do is they get better and better at creating a shared experience. Hi mom, I'm here, where are you? Look, you turn the camera, see that's where the boats are, that kind of thing. Well, if you imagine the ultimate end of that, it's like people that you're talking to can see what you're seeing because they're in the same shared experience you're in. So how do you create that? And so that notion of everybody being connected, or everybody that you want to be connected with being connected, and having shared experiences spanning the world is a very big thing. Spanning generations, spanning lifetimes. If you could see what your grandfather saw when he was a boy, that would be really something. And so we have the technology now to do that. We don't have the storytelling skills, we don't have the lenses, we don't have, all the parts are all crappy, but someday they're going to be fantastic. And when they are, hopefully we'll know how to use those to make life really different. Humans will be different because of that. So I think that's really important. That's epochal, and I want to do that.
Yeah, and adding really quickly to Michael, I think in its essence, VR is a way to provide experience transfer.
Yep.
You guys good? Good. All right. Let's talk about, so how many people here are entertainment industry? I'm just trying to, okay. It's like digital Hollywood. Let's go to storytelling a little bit. We'll talk about, so there's obviously a lot of applications for VR, and I want to kind of cover some of those, but let's talk about storytelling. It seems like, we're trying to reapply the rules of filmmaking. tend to do this in most new industries. We take what we know and we change a little bit. But the question is this all, is it, I'll go to Christine for this. Is this a whole new thing? Like, what's happening? Because you were coming from the film side.
Yeah, definitely. And we're also, to clarify, we're working on from the film side and advertising side as well. And I think also those lines will start to blur a little bit as VR goes on. But I think, storytelling and narrative is a word that's being thrown around a lot right now in VR. And in my experience, I actually haven't seen very many long format narratives or very many experiences that I would qualify as a story to begin with. Very few, actually. If we go back to kind of the grade school lit definition of what a story would comprise, they talk about things like characters, expeditions, themes, settings, and I've not really seen any of that in much VR to date. So I think, for us, and we're working on, sort of long format content that is, unique in that sense and that incorporates those elements. But we're not really exploring that. So we have over 100 years of language in filmmaking and in other ways of storytelling. We have about 2 years maybe in VR. So people are often shoehorning ways that they know how to make content, whether it's from gaming or it's from filmmaking or advertising or other areas, and it's not necessarily native to the platform. So I think what right now is happening is there's sort of this discovery period of what is the native way of telling a story on VR itself.
Right. So either anyone can jump in, but I kind of also want to get what story elements tell you that something can be a great VR project? Like when you see, yeah.
Well, for me, and again, for me, it's an experience that you can't have in the real world. And, beyond the social, I think the social, will be something where, okay, you're able to speak to somebody in Asia and have a conversation and be in the same room with that person. But when I think about marketing and the experiences we want to show, it's putting you in the middle. It's an encounter with a dinosaur. It's a flight on top of a griffin from Warcraft. It's these opportunities that you wouldn't have in real life. I think there's a lot of people using VR right now, just shooting 360 video, and you just putting somebody stationary in a room. I can be in a room on my own without the headset and have that experience, but I can't encounter a dinosaur. I can't fly on a griffin. I can't have these out-of-body experiences that I think we're so interested in right now, especially.
Anybody else want to tackle that question?
Yeah, totally agree with that. And then, if you just plant the camera anywhere, it has to have context. And we're experimenting across the board, everything from real-time, CG, more game-like stuff, all the way down to live 360 streaming. And when you place it somewhere where you can't go, as you just said, then you really have something special. If you can go backstage, if you can go where you're not supposed to be, and you can watch it without commercial breaks, then all of a sudden you tune in, and it's really special.
I just want to add, as a consumer, as opposed to a creator of VR, one of my favorite things is maybe the most boring, I don't know, but it doesn't have all the excitement you talk about. But Chris Milk at Verse made something called Clouds Over Cedra, which if you haven't seen it, you should see. It's short, 5 or 6 minutes, and reasonable, decent people would cry at the end. Okay?
What's it called again?
Clouds Over Cedra, S-I-D-R-A. And it's one of these, just plant the camera and just tell a story by going through somebody's life. It has arguably no cinematography and a pretty slow-paced telling. His scheme is slow-paced. But you are this girl who's in a refugee camp, and you live her life, and you see through her eyes all the other children and all the other adults in a way that's so impactful that I've never seen any other storytelling have that level of impact. I showed it to Ralph Nader a couple of weeks ago. He all but passed out in desperation. I'm serious. The desperation to get all the equipment to make that, to tell the stories of every disadvantaged group he's ever heard of on the planet. It was because it was so engaging. It was just unbelievable. So that's one you should see because it's free. It's easy to see. It says Clouds Over Cedra, and even though it's to Hollywood type people, doesn't have any dragons, doesn't have any lasers. It just has a 12-year-old girl telling her story. But it's like a real story from the heart, and it's told like you were walking around her house with her, which is something you couldn't do any other way. It's really quite fabulous. It can be something better in the future, but that's really, really a hallmark to me.
What about What about how important is sound? You think to VR? What's the impact there? Is it relative to even film? What do you think it's tremendously more, and like what other senses do you guys see being involved to really take VR to the next level?
Yeah, so we're a visuals company, so it's very easy for sound to get overlooked. So we're trying to always, advocate for that internally. But sound is incredibly important to VR, as is all of your other senses. There's kind of this golden standard in VR called presence that people talk about a lot, which is, probably it's again another word that's thrown around a lot, and we sort of researched this early on. But the idea is not to convince somebody that they're somewhere that they're not. The idea is that you suspend disbelief that you actually, or some portion of you, could be in that environment for long enough, and it's that suspension of disbelief. The higher the sense of disbelief, the higher the sense of presence. Now, sound and other inputs strongly add to that. I have kind of a great example of one of our first VR projects that we did for Game of Thrones. We'd been working on, that was our first VR project we did about 2 years ago, and we'd been working on it for about 3 or 4 months, and we'd just been doing visuals and sound, and we'd just been looking at it in the headset. And when we launched it, the whole idea behind launching it, I don't know how familiar any of you are with it, was that we were going to actually, the whole experience took place in an elevator in Castle Black that you go up, and we actually built the physical elevators, and the agency that we were working with at the time, Relevant, they're like, yeah, we're going to put rumble packs in the floor, and we're going to have wind hit you in the face. And we were kind of like, ugh, that sounds a little hokey, but okay, that's fine. And so probably right before, I'd say the week before we were about to launch at South by Southwest, we finally hooked everything up together and had it all working. And I'd become completely desensitized to the experience from having looked at it for 3 or 4 months. I'm like, oh yeah, this thing again. And then I got in the elevator, the physical elevator, and as I put the headset on, I felt the ground rumble as I went up, and I felt the wind hit me, and it was like a completely, totally different experience. Those other elements are just tricking my senses a little bit more into suspending that disbelief. Your senses are very, very, they compensate one another. Your brain is very plastic. So the more you can kind of heighten those experiences, the more your brain can kind of be tricked into thinking, well, maybe some version of me is over there.
Do you think we're going to actually realize the dream of smell-o-vision?
No,
Tony.
we've actually done that already.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
You
have?
can use scent as well.
Yes.
So we're always talking about VR, but just one of the senses. There's all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So what's exciting is actually it's going to be touch and smell and all these other wonderful things.
What are
And
some
that's
of the,
what to come.
What are some of the projects, the coolest projects that you're working on, Tom, that are in, like, what elements are make them the coolest projects?
Well, our game is to just one-up Framestore next time, and that's what's fun, because we're all in it at the beginning, and anyone who does great work furthers the industry, and we're like, how the hell did they do that? And then we'll scratch, and then okay, how do we do this one? We did one for 5 Gum, and we put you inside a container, a shipping container that we'd rigged up, and similar to the rumble packs and the wind, but the extra thing that we added was we could make you fly. So we put you in a harness, and we gave you a special helmet that had an Oculus Rift, headphones, and a smell device. And it's an electronic device, basically, that has flavors that heat up and then give you the smell. But because you're in this virtual world, suddenly you're desensitized, and it works.
I want to ask one more question on the content. We can get back to it, but how are the teams, like, how are the teams different? Like, what does a VR production team look like? How is it structured different from, I guess, even a visual effects team or even just a film production team?
To clarify, are you talking about my team holistically, or my team in terms of a specific type of project that we're working on? Because the team.
I'm trying to get to, like, if someone in the, if someone wants to create VR content, what are the specialists that they're going to need
Sure.
to make it happen?
Well, it depends on the type of VR content that you're producing. I mean, there's sort of 2 camps of VR content right now. One is sort of the pre-rendered, content, which can include live action or CGI or a combination thereof, but it's pre-rendered, so it's a video deliverable. And then there's sort of the game engine interactive land of content. So the actual production teams for both of those scenarios look quite different. For the pre-rendered side, you'd have a lot more of the traditional visual effects folks that you might normally find. You'd have directors involved. We have creative, whether or not we're directing things ourselves with our own suite of directors or we're working with outside directors, we always have creative directors that understand VR partnering with those directors. On top of that, visual effects supervisors are incredibly important in the process to make sure that what we're shooting is not going to create a 9-month nightmare for us in post-production. And then on the flip side, when you're looking at game engine content, we still utilize a lot of our visual effects talent as they can make things look very good. But we also have, built our team up with a lot of AAA game developer talent because they have the understanding of, how to deal with things like high poly counts and, making complex effects run at 60 frames plus per second. So, there's a little bit of similarity in the traditional makeup, but for us, especially for game engine content, what I'm specifically trying to do is teach a lot of our traditional visual effects artists how to use game engines as a new toolbox for themselves.
I have one more sort of related question about UX, user experience, and designing user experience in VR. How do you get people involved in the story? Are there any rules that are sort of playing out as far as how you manage UX within a virtual reality environment? And I imagine it's different for different applications, but more in storytelling, where you have an act, instead of coming from the front, you have an actress coming in from the back, or
yeah. I feel like I'm answering all the questions, but
or, anybody could.
No, I can kick it off. I think user experience is the first thing that needs to be thought about in any virtual reality experience. For us, previs is one of the most important things when we're developing a virtual reality experience, because I can't tell you that every single project that we've scripted, boarded, concepted has ended up radically different as a VR experience. And that's just from user testing. And we literally, every stage of the process, have to put a headset on somebody's head and say, does this work? Is this working the way that we thought it was? If it's not, scrap it and go back to the drawing board and try something else. That's the way to create an effective VR experience. You have to keep the user at the center of what you want to achieve, because it's ultimately them that needs to walk away with the feeling that you want.
Anybody? Anything to add to UX?
For more interactive game-like experiences, there are things we know from the modeling and simulation world and that world's experiences, VR, that we know that work. There's one metaphor that's called the world of miniature metaphor, and with that, you basically hold a miniature map of the world you're in, and you point to where you want to go, and you basically teleport from point to point. Mm-hmm. There's also, a lot of you may be familiar with, in Cardboard and Gear VR apps, the Gaze Select, where you basically look at something to select, and that pops up. That's used pretty frequently. There are there's something called the go-go technique, which is called a lot of different things, where if you have something like the Oculus Touch controller, you basically sling and point to something in the world and you teleport to that. And the reason for so many of these being around teleportation is because the guidelines right now are to avoid locomotion in the environment, because that can induce the visual vestibular conflict, which is dizziness, nausea. Another metaphor that works well, the tool belt. Basically, let's say you have a lot of different objects you need to grab in your interactive game environment or pseudo-interactive narrative environment. Put those on your around your waist, and that's taking advantage of natural interactions you have in the real world. It's formerly your kinesthetic and your sense and your sense of proprioception. So there are some guidelines out there, and I think that's the basic stuff. But the things like Framestore is doing, this iterative testing, this trial and error, I think that's where we're going to really develop a UX practice. Something beyond these basic things we've learned in the past.
I think it's important. We're all going to get aligned. The more experiences come out, we'll see what works and what doesn't. The one thing I would say is, if you're considering doing your first VR experience to a mass audience, I would keep it really simple. So now I advise against doing any of the buttons, any of this stuff. It's fine for us geeks that we're playing around with this stuff. We know it. But most people, when they try it on, they're like, oh my God. And most of the time, they don't even move their head.
Yeah.
Right? And you have to tell them, no, look around, look around. And then they haven't got the idea of the UX. You've got to stare at something.
Yeah.
They don't know this yet. So if you're investing budget in making a VR content and you've got a button, they're not going to see what's behind the button. So keep it simple, wow them, make it exciting, and slowly they're going to get more educated. As you said, we are at the very beginning of time when it comes to VR. So keep it simple.
So I just want to relate something from a long time ago in my career. I worked at the Disney Imagineering on a ride called the Aladdin Magic Castle ride. And so you sat on this virtual reality thing with a more expensive equipment. It was SGI, and they were building that. And basically, you sat on the magic carpet. You could ride through this beautiful village. And what was interesting about that I want to relate is that people sat on this thing, and then some people, because it's a lot of people who go through Disneyland, some people just sat there. Okay, you know, some people steered and did things. Some people just sat there. So at Disney, they found that out in playtesting. What they did was, to make a good guest experience, Iago the parrot would swoop in after like a few seconds of you just sitting there and start squawking to you about, hey, you can steer. And if you didn't steer, his little talon came out. He grabbed the carpet corner, and the tassel did something real cute, and he hauled you through the thing, right? You know, so and until you steered away from him, he pulled you through the ride. So that whether you just sat there inert, or whether you got caught on and drove, or whether you started on your own, it was always a good experience for you, right? So it was designed for anybody to start. And I think, for example, the first level of every Shigeru Miyamoto game, every like Mario 64 or Super Mario, the first level is always one where you can't get hurt, but you can learn how to climb and jump and swim. You can swim, but the water is shallow. You don't drink. You don't sink. You can climb the tree, but you fall out. You land on the grass. You don't get crushed. You know, there's nothing to hurt you. You learn all the skills, and that's just basic game design, basic storytelling. It isn't all new, because we all live in a reality, and we know how to like take people on a tour of our house. You know, we know how to do that. It's not like that's a new idea. So I think we learn. Just forget about film. Think about real life. And how do you host a party? How do you introduce people? I mean, those skills are also very relevant in VR.
So I want to jump to a more macro question. So I was reading a recent survey and said that 70% of men and 40% of women watch porn on the internet. And then the study went on to include the other 30% of men. So I don't want to ask a leading question, but what do you think the killer apps are in VR? And I'm gonna call Rich out, not on the porn thing, but
it is porn. So no, we get asked that question. We get called almost weekly with people asking us to do that, but that's something that we're not going to approach. So sorry to disappoint, Sean.
But what about we had a conversation about live streaming. Yep. VR. What do you think?
Yeah. So you know, we're doing a lot of the same things that Framestore is doing. Yeah. Well, yeah. I actually haven't even seen it yet. Maybe you can send me some links. But we're doing a lot of the advertising stuff that the other guys at the table are doing. And we're doing a lot of the in-engine stuff with our gaming teams. We're actually doing a lot of stuff with our virtual production stage too, kind of taking VR and going backwards and using VR as a tool to help film. But one of the biggest things that we're investing our time, resource, and brains on is the live category. And with our sister company and joint venture IM360, we have this incredible camera system that does everything from ingest to spit out to any screen, and we can bring it to any event. And we can stream it to you live, and we can tell you and show you what it's like to be there. Literally planting cameras all over the place, and we don't care what device you have. If it's a headset or if it's a cell phone right here, we can bring you right there, and you can bounce around and decide where you want to be. Do you want to be backstage? Do you want to be front row maybe, or do you want to be on the bench? Wherever actually we're allowed to put the cameras. And that's one of our key focuses, with this tech.
to live streaming, NBC did a pretty cool experience with the SNL 40th anniversary, and it put you in the audience, kind of watching, that SNL recording, and you're sitting next to Jay-Z and Amy Poehler, and you're amongst these people, and what a cool experience that was. And for so long now, we've been kind of live streaming our premieres, putting people on the red carpet, just through Periscope and all these other platforms, but. The 360 element, I think, is such a cool thing. Again, to your point of putting somebody wherever they are in the middle of the country at a premiere, or sitting next to Jay-Z at the SNL 40th premiere. I mean, that's something that's so compelling.
And I should have mentioned it. We're doing that kind of thing and more. So we just did the VMAs, and we were on the red carpet. You could be there, you could bounce around, and you could see everyone come in, and see the stars go right by you, and take a peek and do a screenshot. And we did actually Conan 360. He took all the credit, but we did all the work. We were there all the whole week for Comic-Con, and we brought that to the universe. And we're doing that stuff now, and now we're working behind the scenes, behind the curtain, trying to make it more interactive to all the points we've been talking about on this panel. Watching is great. Bringing you someplace you can't go is fantastic. But then having another layer of interaction. And touching and feeling, or opening exclusive areas when it's live. So we're trying a lot and kind of merging all of our pipelines right now.
And this is all And this is all happening now. So you can imagine the future is going to be, okay, the touchdown, the instant replay will be a VR one, and that's going to be really exciting when you're actually there, people running towards you.
So I want to get to Michael and Jarrell, because you guys, we're talking about entertainment, but there's education and training, therapy. Heritage and archaeology, you were saying, seeing the same thing your grandfather saw. Like, what do you think about some applications that you think are really important outside of entertainment?
Well, I think all those use cases are valid, and there have been examples of them on small scales in museums around the world probably for the past 20 years. But now that VR is becoming mass market, it's pretty exciting about how you could bring that out to a much wider audience. VR therapy was validated in the early 90s, a study around fear of heights and there are companies around the world that offer VR therapy in conjunction with traditional therapies. Education, we can all imagine what's possible there. I've seen some amazing stuff done by some companies looking to really build up a business around this. Travel to Easter Island, being able to see those statues up front, it sends chills down your spine. Google has a big initiative called Expeditions, where they provide Android devices and cardboards to teachers with some guidelines. Simulation and training, we know that Ivan Sutherland, he was working with Bell Helicopter with the first HMD, the roots. We know what that can provide. And in terms of being able to capture an experience in your life and provide someone descendants later ability to see what it was like back then, that's a whole nother level, a whole nother area to explore.
So these are all really important. It's about the human experience, and so if you can share that, if you can live it more fully, if it's, whether it's a thrill thing where the stereo cameras are on the drone that you fly into the lava in the volcano. Well, you wouldn't want to experience it live, but you can experience it sort of virtually, or if it's just sharing a picnic. All of those things are important. One of the things that I've seen so far, we make special equipment, and is that the people at Smithsonian and President of National Geographic were all so excited because they could take all their viewers and all their, like in the Smithsonian, they have a lot of exhibit items like the Apollo command capsule that's basically like an aluminum can. It's like completely fragile. It barely worked. But it worked, but it barely worked because weight was everything, right? So they can't let people go inside it. But they'd like to, because it's for everybody to enjoy, but they can't because it would be destroyed the first day. So they want to do very high resolution stereo, spheres all throughout the thing, let you change things and do things, but then let everybody experience it virtually. I talked to the president of Ghana, who wants to do a museum of African slavery and freedom on Cape Coast. And what we talked about was people all around the world where people went to need to be able to see this. And it's got to be virtual reality, because unless you've been in these unbelievably subhuman conditions, you just don't, unless you've been in the room, you can't understand what it meant. So those kind of experiences are very important. We had 1 billion people using Google Earth, just understanding other people's experiences. We're going to have 1 billion people using VR just to understand the planet they live on, the cultures they're talking to. what people do in other countries. It's a very important thing.
They're the first non-profit that brings, shows their like lack of water experience in Africa. Probably increase their donations.
Yeah.
What about, you were talking about enterprise VR. Can you kind of, Michael, we talked about it on the phone.
Yeah, so we've been approached by a lot. This is, you start a company and you think you're going to do one thing, and then people show up with money and they want to do something different. So you kind of, you sell what people are buying, right? So what it turns out is that there are a lot of companies, like big companies, like Fortune 5 type companies, like really big companies, who are a lot of them in engineering, construction, manufacturing, design businesses. They build cars, they build planes, they build things, roads, and they want to use VR to test things, and they've been doing that, of course. And they've come to us because we make these unusual lenses, okay, honestly. And so everybody else is like, 90 degrees. It's like looking through a tube. And we're like 150 degrees. And what we made for Lockheed Martin was a 220-degree field of view headset. That was a completely real human experience. And so they want that one. And so we've been lining up at our doors in Silicon Valley. And so we've been making these 220-degree HMDs, lightweight. And so it turns out that there are a lot of people who, like businesses who, for example, people make cars. They want to design a car and then pretend to sit in it. And they want to see the left side view mirror and the right side view mirror as they drive the car, because that's what you do when you drive the car. But with normal VR, all you can see is like the hood. Like even with Oculus and Vive, you can see one mirror and the hood. You can't see the other mirror. So that's just not real. It's not a virtual reality at all. It's like virtual blindness or virtual macular degeneration or something. It's not really, it's not really real. And so these enterprise type people are showing up, wanting to buy that. And so it's not as glamorous maybe, but they want to buy. They pay a lot, so maybe we'll keep on helping them.
I want to talk a little bit about monetization. Since we have advertising people, and a lot of the several people on the panel are supported by advertising. Like, how do you guys see advertising integrating into the VR world? Like, and if I'm a brand, how can I collaborate with people who know what they're doing? Like, how do you guide a brand? Like, talk about what the opportunity is. Let's go with Cameron.
Well, I work at Universal. I am a brand a lot of the times, but you're right. My movies are also my brands, right? And so I see the opportunity, especially when it comes to monetization, is what's the unique experience that I can provide through VR, and how can I create a series of unique experiences that I can then put into one app and monetize those. So for Jurassic World, we actually called the experience the Jurassic World Apatosaurus experience, because it was a counter with an Apatosaurus. We named it that specifically so our home entertainment team could make the Jurassic World T-Rex experience, or the Jurassic World, you can think of the list of dinosaurs, and suddenly it's like baseball cards, where you're trading, you're buying, you're selling, and people are asking if you've bought that one or downloaded that experience. And so that's, I think, the real opportunity for us when it comes to monetization. But I also think, with live streaming, that opportunity. When I think about NBC and the Olympics, or when I think about NFL football, or even right now with the World Series or the playoffs, putting somebody in that environment with the 360 camera, giving somebody the best seat at the house, whether it's the Oscars or a live sporting event, that's an opportunity to monetize something. That's a ticket that you could never get anywhere else that now you have, and suddenly you're in the front row of a stadium watching your favorite team win a game. So I think there's a lot of different avenues for Comcast and for NBC Universal, but those are just some of the things that I think we're thinking about.
Yeah, and to that, there's a lot of ideas that people are exploring on, what's going to happen in a couple of years with monetization. Is it going to be microtransaction like video games, or is it going to be pay-per-view, as you were just talking about, which we definitely believe in, or exclusive content paid for? But right now, like today, most of the monetization is happening. It's mostly free. So the guys who are making the money right now, it's the guys providing the services, and it's the guys who are making the content that's going out for the brands. Typically, that's kind of driving the innovation right now. The true content that is ready for consumers to feel like I'm going to slap down my credit card for it, that's coming soon, but we haven't seen it quite yet.
It's also the length of the experience that's going to be available, which is from 0 to about 10 minutes, which advertisers can leap into that, because the film guys aren't doing it, the gaming companies aren't doing it. So there's a niche for advertisers to bring an experience of that length.
And they're used to producing short content.
Yep, and for them it's really easy. It's like basically it's a commercial. Shooting a live action VR piece, it's a TV commercial with a different camera. and they know how to tell stories. They know how to do this stuff. And for 3D as well, they know how to do 3D stuff. It's a little bit more difficult because you're shooting in 360, so if you have talent, how are you lighting this talent? Where's the camera? Normally, if you're this hero, the cameras are behind me. The camera's here, the lights are behind me. But in real 360, it's not. So external outdoor is a popular venue at the moment because you can just use sunlight.
So another monetization scheme we've seen, not that we've used, but we date with the people that want to do this, is there are several companies in the world who stream online video. So Netflix would be one, LETV in China. There's a set of these, you know. And one kind of theory is that you would get your inexpensive VR device from whichever walled garden you align yourself with. And you would get the red Netflix movie viewer or the yellow Amazon movie viewer or whatever, and it would come in the mail because you signed up for the theatrical cinema experience. We use our lenses to create a IMAX theater on phones, for example, with a full field of view. So if you wanted that, then the natural place to get it from would be the people that stream the movies to you. So in that worldview, all these things are free. The hardware devices are all free. They come as a captive thing. It's kind of like you sign up with NBC and they send you a TV set. You know, like imagine that. And in a world like that, then what happens is the devices all become widely available wherever the footprint of these streaming services is, and maybe not so elsewhere, but in those places. And then it's just a content rush to fill that with other content, if those companies will let you. So, you know, if Apple sends you the gadget to watch Apple TV, will you be able to watch any content that doesn't come from the Apple Store? Probably not, right? So this is a walled garden aggrandizement, and that's a theory of revenue as well.
Yeah. So, do you think guys think that Second Life, the promise of Second Life in a VR environment, where you can buy storefronts and virtual goods, is that inevitable?
That's inevitable. It's going to be like that, and actually, it's going to make us more human because instead of buying a ticket through a website that's clunky, and you're going to just buy a ticket the way you bought a ticket back in the day, talking to someone.
And then, of course, there's the elephant in the room, porn. If I'm a brand, let's go to Christine. If I'm a brand and I want to produce something, what's the process of work? I come with you, I sit down, I meet, and what's the process of? You guys are doing, and also Tom, you guys are doing branded entertainment, right?
Yeah. So what's the right process?
How can we make people more effective working with you?
For sure. I mean, I think for us, the first thing that we try to do when a brand comes in is to get them to start thinking a little bit differently and thinking about certain things first. I mentioned user experience earlier, and I think we ask all of our brands before they start thinking about what's the big idea. Am I a sports player? Am I doing this? Whatever. Before they even start going down that road, which we usually try to steer them away from anyway, we ask them to think about what is that one reaction? What is that one emotion? What is the behavior you want to enact within the person when they take off the headset? And then we say, okay, great, we've identified that. Now let's craft our experience in layers around there. Let's leave little breadcrumbs in our experience to make sure that that's what the user is going to walk away with and keep that at its heart. The second thing that we ask brands to identify is, what are your objectives? Let's be realistic about this. Is your objective to have an incredibly powerful and engaging experience with the user, or is it to reach 50,000 people? Because you probably right now can't have both. So I think those are important things that we have to get brands to sort of say, here's how it is. It's on the table. This is what you have to choose from right now. And then we work on crafting the experience. And we understand that everyone has marketing strategies and agendas that they want to achieve within everything that goes out. But I think we try to make sure that they don't shoehorn all of that into the work that they do. I think we had a really great, when we worked with Marriott, we've worked on 2 different VR projects with Marriott, and we have a really great kind of story with them. The first round of VR work that they did with us, they really wanted to showcase their new hotels and spend most of the time showcasing their new hotels and then do 2 short travel experiences. And we were kind of like, I I think people are going to be more interested in travel experiences, but, okay, you guys want to do that? Fine, we'll do that. And they did that, and they did this huge teleporter experience. It was wildly successful, got a lot of PR. But then when they came back the second round, what did they want to do? Just travel experiences. They realized, I think, and that's an important moment for a brand, when they done VR, they had a learning about what they did, and they now came back and said, well, the travel experiences are really what's most valuable to the user. Those are really the things that are making the biggest statement about us as a brand right now, not our revamped hotel rooms or areas. It's the sort of experiences and places we can connect you with that really represent our brand.
Yeah. Can you say something interesting that would enlighten the audience?
Sure. And it's not going to involve porn, okay? It's early days, basically. It's early days, so everyone is experimenting, and our job a lot of the time is education. If you're going to be a good client, this applies to any piece of content, is if you bring in the experts, listen to them.
Yeah.
All right.
That's just, no, as I've got a lot of potential, interesting people. If you bring in the experts, don't come with come with your preconceived notion. Let's start with that. But then, if you're going to experts, and it is experts with quotes, go to the people that have made the most mistakes before. Right. We're now on our 18th project for brands, and we try and make a new mistake every time.
What I want to switch up a little bit. What are the concerns? Like, why does Oculus say you have to be 13?
That comes from the concerns around the accommodation convergence conflict. And back when the Virtual Boy came out, that thing sold nearly 1 million units, believe it or not, in the mid-90s. Famously, you opened it up, big red letters. If you're like under, I think it was 7, don't use this because it could cause permanent eye damage. And the thought is that if your eyes are still developing, and if you basically wore a headset and forced your eyes to, converge and accommodate like you have to do in VR displays, that it might cause some damage. No one's ever proven that. That's being extremely conservative. Oculus, the initial, I think DK1, they had they were saying 7, and then it changed to 13. I think they're just being extremely conservative. Mattel just released a next generation ViewMaster. In it, I think the cutoff, they're doing it around 4, and they're saying they looked at ophthalmologists. It's concerns around potential eye issues, but honestly, no, I don't think anyone has ever had their eyes damaged in VR, but I think theoretically, if you strapped one to your head and forced a person to keep their eyes open for days and days, then their eyes are still developing, you might cause a problem. But that's the roots of that concern,
Yeah.
I'll just nuance that slightly.
Yeah.
So that's exactly right. But there's 2 issues. There's is the coffee hot, and could you get sued about it? Right? So there's like 2 issues, right? So one is, there's not enough human experience about a lot of things to know the exact details, so you don't know for sure, which makes you want to be cautious because you're a decent person or a decent company or whatever. The other one is some countries are very litigious, and juries always find for the poorer, smaller, more innocent person. Okay, so if it's small person versus giant like McDonald's, the person says, "I burned my hand on the hot coffee. How could I have known?" And then the jury finds for the plaintiff, right? It's crazy, really. Honestly, right? It's crazy. So in a world like that, then if you can't show some good evidence that it's safe for so-and-so, then you say, people that I can't prove it's safe shouldn't use it. Of course they're going to use it. One might imagine they might use it, but you've said they shouldn't use it, okay? So there's an element of that. So there's this medical question, which I don't think we should give any extra gravitas to, but there's this legal question, which as a CEO, I give a lot of gravitas to. It's a big deal, just because you got to be careful. So also on the convergence accommodation conflict, I'll just mention, which is the Holy Grail thing in VR, one of the many Holy Grail things. Ivan Sutherland talked about that in his 1968 paper, and Magic Leap and we are both working on that. And so there are people working on that problem very aggressively and demoing solutions. So it's not like it's a permanent issue, but what that means, if you don't know, since we don't want to use acronyms, is that in stereo, like being a human, when something's far away or it comes close, you have to do 2 things. You have to swivel your eyes in because it's close, and you've got to squeeze with muscles in your eyes to change the focus to be closer. So if a VR thing, if the thing gets closer, you've got to swivel your eyes in, but you don't have to change your focus. Your brain says, well, that's not right. And so that presumably can cause some fatigue or some concern or some instant nausea or whatever. The point is some displeasure. And then on the other side is if you're a baby and you're looking around to learn how that you should turn your eyes in and squeeze at the same time by touching the rails of your crib. If you're glued to a VR headset like Clockwork Orange or something, maybe you won't get the lesson.
Okay, let's not put babies in VR, okay?
Yeah.
That's just that.
So I'm just saying. I mean, it's both a real kind of imaginary thing, and then a legal, very real thing, and so that's the combination.
And I think to add to that as well, I mean, on the legal side, I think the 13 age, for me, I think parents of children under the age of 13 are much more attentive to the products that their children have and are using. So there's the kind of scare of getting that paranoia of headphones causes deafness sort of thing that I think people are being extra conservative about wanting to avoid. After 13 and a little bit older, parents hopefully are a little less helicopterish and, well, some parents.
It seems like,
Not
I
from
mean,
Brooklyn.
depression, a bit like, by the real life is probably going to be a letdown for people when they come out of these environments, especially real sex. Depression. I mean, you have kids now who are on therapist couches saying my parents didn't retweet me enough. So this is definitely going to lead to therapy. And then lastly. Last of my questions. What about what in the recent future is going to really push VR forward? Like, what are the sort of technologies that we need to make this more interesting? You know.
I'm on that one. So the number one thing, it sounds like an advertisement, but it's not. Is that reality for humans who are not defective, like for regular people, is that you can see 180 degrees. When you look straight ahead. You know, I can see her, and I can see people on both sides of me. I can't see them really well, and in truth, I can't see color over there, that humans can't, but you see motion over there. And that's the place that tigers leap from, or snakes swivel in the grass. That's this mid-peripheral area. Okay, so 60 degrees is like your high acuity. The next 60 on each side, that's where when you're on the subway and the other train moves, you feel like you're moving. It's that area, okay? A huge amount of comfort comes from your apparent motion up front and the side motion being the same. It's a huge thing. And so current VR is like in this tunnel. And so you don't get that. And that's a huge part of kind of a discomfort. So the wide field of view is a very big deal. Our worst glasses are like $50 and they're 150 degree field of view versus 70 to 90, like cardboard 70, 90 for Oculus. So like 40 or 20 is like legally blind, and Microsoft, HoloLens is like right around there. So like it's just like this narrow field of view is just not going to work for a real experience. So I think wide field of view is really, really important. Also, spatial sound was mentioned before, hugely important. It anchors you in a real world, right? When you turn your head around and the picture's moving, it's just a picture. What's real? So maybe wind could be real, maybe the voices of people can be real. People that have done applications with really good audio, like John has done some things with positional sound from Dolby. That creates a level of reality that's totally transformative versus not. Mm-hmm. Okay, so clearly, you're trying to do virtual reality. The major parts of reality, each one of those parts of reality is part of reality. It's not like looking isn't important. Like this isn't reality. You know, not hearing, that's not reality. So all these things are super important. They haven't happened yet. They just, I mean, people don't know that. When people get their million Google Cardboards in the New York Times, they'll think it's cool. They'll think it's a tiny field of view with crappy lenses. So so they'll say, well, that was interesting. Will they be transformed with an epiphany? Maybe. You know, I hope so. I don't know. They might be just turned off because it's all fuzzy. You know, and one more thing I say that's a bad thing is almost all the devices, well, actually every device but ours, but nonetheless, but just honest, they all require you to fiddle with them before you look. You've got to move the lenses to fit where your eyes are. It's called the interpupillary distance. And like if you ever use binoculars, first you wiggle them like this, then you twist them like that, and then you pivot. You know, so that means you can't like pass it around the dinner table because there's all this adjustment, right? So it's not going to be really like a phone. You can just hand it to somebody and they can talk to mom. You know, it needs to be, she's wearing glasses, she looks at it, he's not, he looks at it. You know, we're all different sizes.
Well, right now, nobody has them. That's the
Well, when they get them, they'll think it's fuzzy, and somebody's going to say, "Oh, you got to adjust this and twist that."
I think it'll be great. Yeah, sorry, just to
you're right.
Just to zoom out a little bit from the field of view thing. Number one, these headsets are coming. They're going to be everywhere, and it's going to be great. And someone's going to figure out a way of getting them to your people.
Yeah.
The tools, at the moment, we're all making the tools up. It's so early days that we're literally building the cameras and building the lights to make the analogy with film. And hopefully by the end of this year, halfway through next year, they're going to be industry standard tools that I can go rent, and then I can focus on telling stories, basically.
And one quick thing on the tools side and on the capture side, moving away from the head-mounted displays, is that I think companies like Digital Domain and Framestore, I'm sure you've already experimenting or maybe even doing work around this, is that 360 video, I mean, that's a very powerful tool, but it's not the end-all, be-all. I want to be able to not just view from the sidelines a soccer match. I want to be able to stand at the goal line. I want to be able to be in the quarterback position and move into that replay. That there are various techniques for doing that. They exist now where you're not just capturing video, you're using depth cameras, some advanced computer vision to basically capture the entire 3D scene. And you can walk into it. I've seen it. It's powerful. I think it's something that could be monetized, and I think it'll really blow some people away, even beyond what the amazing things you can do with just simple 360 video.
On the content side, in terms of wide adoption, I think we need to start seeing a lot of content that isn't just a one-time hit, that provides a utility and can be reused over and over again, so that people aren't just picking up a headset and saying, okay, what else is there? It provides an actual functional utility to them on a daily basis. And once we start seeing that, I think we'll start seeing mass adoption of headsets.
Okay.
And I was going to say, when once we see that mass adoption of headsets, I think we look forward to being able to create more content because we know that reach is there,
Yep.
and so we'd be more inclined to invest in a major way when it comes to creating more
Chicken
stories.
and egg.
For those headsets.
Yeah, so our solution was to build something for watching movies. That is something you'll watch on the train or the plane somewhere, like you're in a dorm room. That gives you IMAX theater, like a pocket IMAX. So we worked on that as our first thing, so that people could, because they already watch a billion, I'm from Google, so I know about YouTube usage. People watch the amazing amount of, I don't know where they get time for that actually, but they watch an amazing amount of little videos on YouTube. Well, they watch them in adverse circumstances. So they could watch it in the theater by just clipping something onto their cell phone. They might do that. And so I thought we could get enough volume through the movies to then have them have the device, which could show all the good content. So that would be a way to kind of break the chicken and egg standoff.
Okay. We are out of time, so I thank you for attending this panel, and I thank the panelists for your answers. These guys are going to be giving out free money and jobs, so you can.
Can I buy one of those now?